It was a muggy Friday in April in Melrose, a small town surrounded by fields and silences that seemed to scream things no one dared to say. In the main hallway of Melrose High School, among worn-out lockers and student campaign posters, Jordan Banks walked as always, with quick, firm steps, clutching her blue binder as if it were an invisible suit of armor. At 17, Jordan was the student everyone knew but few truly saw. She was the top of her class, had college acceptance letters framed in her heart, and carried the look of someone who knew exactly where she wanted to go. She wasn't shy. She just had no time to waste. Her world revolved around high grades, shifts at the public library, and a hard-won quiet peace. That morning, nothing seemed out of the ordinary, until the moment when the sound of a plastic bottle being crushed tore through the air. Jordan barely had time to glance sideways when she felt the cold impact of water on her chest. The white shirt, soaked, clung to her body like an uncomfortable second skin. Laughter echoed through the corridor. In the midst of the circle of wide eyes, there he was, Officer Bradley Keene, the school security guard and father of Tyler Keene, the only student who still tried to match Jordan's grades. "It was unintentional," he said with a crooked smile, as if he knew exactly what he had done. But the humiliation had already been unleashed, seeping through the buttons of her drenched blouse, turning Jordan into the spectacle of the day. And in that frozen moment, something inside her broke. Jordan said nothing, not a word. She simply turned away and kept walking, her shoes making a nauseating sound with every wet step. No one followed her. No one helped her. The silence was complicit, and the entire corridor seemed numb. Inside the bathroom, she looked at herself in the mirror and saw more than a clinging t-shirt. She saw doubt, anger, helplessness. She tried to convince herself that it had been a fluke, a stumble, a distraction, but deep down she knew it wasn't. It was intentional. It had a target, and the target was her. For the first time, Jordan realized that what had happened wasn't an isolated incident. It was another point linking to others. It wasn't the first episode. There was that day a few weeks ago when she was coming back from night classes and was stopped less than 3 blocks from home. The school security car approached slowly and, as if following a script, Officer Keene asked her to pull over. He claimed that she had failed to stop at a stop sign, but Jordan knew that street like the back of her hand. She stopped indeed, calmly, as she always did. What began as a traffic stop turned into a series of nonsensical questions. What was she doing there so late? Why was she walking alone? Whose car was it? She answered everything firmly, but left there trembling. After that, he appeared in the library one afternoon. He said nothing. He just stood there, observing from afar, as if marking his territory. Jordan thought she was overreacting, but now she no longer believed so. That night, lying in bed with the sheets pulled up to her chin, Jordan went over everything like someone trying to assemble a puzzle with pieces that felt uncomfortably familiar. And then came the memory of the history debate. That had been a turning point. Tyler Keene, Officer Keene's son and the perennial runner-up of the class, had defended a weak point about foreign policy. Jordan, without raising her voice or taking her eyes off her notebook, dismantled his argument with surgical precision. The room vibrated in silence. Even the teacher, Mr. Reynolds, raised an eyebrow with that slight smile as if he had witnessed something brilliant. Tyler blushed, more than humiliated, wounded. And Jordan realized for the first time that being too good could irritate the wrong people. Tyler was the kind of boy everyone expected to be the best. White, articulate, the son of a policeman, captain of the debate team. Jordan, on the other hand, was seen as too exceptional to be normal. A black girl who knew more than she should, who spoke little but thought deeply. And in the corridors of Melrose High, that upset the invisible balance of things. Since the debate, Tyler began treating her with a measured coldness, vague social media posts, sidelong glances, whispered conversations with friends. But it was when Malik, the school quarterback, started walking with Jordan to class that everything unraveled. Malik was popular, respected, and now he was seen smiling alongside Jordan. The equation became unbearable for Tyler. And then, as in a predictable play, his father stepped in. On Friday afternoon, Jordan became a shadow within her own routine. She entered the classroom mute, left in silence, and didn't meet anyone's eyes. People no longer laughed, but they also kept their distance. It was as if she carried something contagious. The humiliation had dried on the outside, but inside it still flowed. The binder, which had once been her armor, now seemed like a weight. When she arrived at the last class of the day, her head pounded. Mr. Reynolds, always attentive, noticed that something was wrong. He didn't say anything publicly. He waited for the bell to ring, for the chairs to scrape and the room to empty. Then, in a low and steady voice, he called, "Jordan, can you stay for a minute?" She hesitated, but stayed. She didn't have the strength to run away. The teacher didn't say much. He simply looked into her eyes as if he didn't need evidence to understand what was happening. "I saw that debate, and I saw what they did to you today." Jordan swallowed hard. It was the first time anyone had said anything. Reynolds continued, "You're not crazy. You're not too sensitive. This is real." Jordan trembled. Her eyes burned, but she didn't cry. Her body seemed entirely composed of restraint. The teacher offered help, the school counselor, the principal, even a contact in the district. But Jordan shook her head. "I don't trust this system anymore," she murmured almost inaudibly. Because in that school, those in uniform were always right. And she already knew that what hurt the most wasn't the attack itself, but the feeling that no one would do anything. Later, when she got home, Jordan dropped her backpack on the living room floor and went straight up to her room, wanting nothing more than to forget the day. But she stopped midway up the stairs. The combat boots, they were there, leaning by the door, lined up as always. Her heart skipped a beat. Her father had returned. Elijah Banks, ex-colonel of the army, an expert in intelligence and silence. He never announced his arrival. He only showed up when he needed to be. Jordan slowly descended. She found her mother in the kitchen trying to appear calm. "He just got here," she said. Instead of dodging the conversation, Jordan took a deep breath and recounted everything. Without pauses, without filter. The hallway, the water, Officer Keene, Tyler, the covert pursuit. For the first time, she spoke it all out loud. Her father listened without interrupting. Not a single question. Just his way of crossing his arms, his face set in a firm line, and his deep, steady gaze, as if he were recording every word with military precision. When she finished, Elijah nodded once and disappeared into his office. He stayed in there the entire night. No dinner, no music, only the rapid clicks of a keyboard and the rustling of turning pages. Jordan went to sleep with a knot in her stomach. In the morning, when she woke up, there was a folder on the living room table. Inside, records of abuse of power, formal complaints, 3 cases of excessive force, and even an old video of a violent stop carried out by Keene at another school years ago. Her father not only believed her, he had proof, and now he had a plan. On Monday morning, Melrose High looked like any other, with its yellow buses groaning at the entrance and teenagers shuffling through the corridors as if the weekend had never happened. But something different hung in the air, a silent tension that no one could name, and then he entered. Not hurriedly, not arrogantly, just present. Colonel Elijah Banks, in a dark suit and with impeccable posture, walked across the school lobby with the same authority as a general crossing a battlefield. Every step seemed to carve a warning into the floor. Something important is about to happen. He didn't ask to speak with the principal. He asked where she was. The secretary tried to say that she was in a meeting, but Elijah simply pointed to the clock and replied, "Right now, she's with me." Principal Denise Thornton, a woman accustomed to handling overexcited parents and endless bureaucracies, braced herself for yet another confrontation. But what she found was different. Elijah wasn't there to shout. He was there to show. Calmly, he opened the folder on her desk. A detailed report, organized like only someone with an intelligence background could manage. Name by name, date by date. Formal complaints, buried incidents, testimonies from parents who had never been heard. A timeline that revealed a pattern of behavior no one dared name: racial harassment. Elijah did not raise his voice. He simply said, "My daughter was attacked, but this goes far beyond her." Then he continued, "The question now is whether you want to fix this in here or if you prefer that I take it outside." On the desk, along with the documents, he left 2 business cards, one for a civil rights lawyer and another for a reporter from the Arkansas Tribune. Both already had meetings scheduled for the next day. The principal's face, once so rigid, melted into one of surprise and fear. Not for herself, but for the system that she now knew was about to be exposed. She asked for a moment. Elijah stood, adjusted his blazer and said, "Time is what you don't have." That same day, before the second period, Officer Keene was called out of the surveillance room and informed of his immediate suspension, pending a formal investigation. The rumor spread quickly through the school. It took less than 2 classes for the subject to be on every desk, every lunchbox, every corner of the corridors. Jordan watched it all from afar, trying not to appear as though she knew more than everyone else. But inside her, something began to settle. It wasn't revenge, it was relief. 3 other students approached Mr. Reynolds that very afternoon. 3 similar stories, 3 patterns, 3 voices that now were no longer afraid to speak. In the days that followed, Jordan noticed that something had changed in the way people looked at her. It was no longer the embarrassed glance of someone who witnessed an injustice and chose silence. It was a cautious look, as if everyone was trying to understand what they knew but never wanted to admit. The corridors that once felt narrow and suffocating now made way for her. The whispers diminished. Even the laughter, once constant and boisterous, was replaced by a strange quiet. Tyler stopped occupying his invisible throne at the back of the room. He now sat further forward, head down, eyes fixed on anything but Jordan. He had deleted several posts. He stopped interacting with the friends who encouraged him to remain at the top. It wasn't humiliation, it was reflection. And Jordan felt it not as a victory, but as an unspoken truce. She didn't go around telling everyone what had happened. There was no need. The story ran its course, as these things do when they reach a point of no return. But Jordan didn't hide either. Gradually, she began to occupy spaces she had once avoided. She was invited to join a student group focused on racial and gender justice, and she accepted. She wrote an essay about emotional invisibility for the school newspaper and signed it with her full name. She began walking through the hallways with a new posture, no longer clutching her binder as a shield, but letting it hang at her side like a tool. Her peace did not come from having won something. It came from the simple fact that finally someone had said, "I believe in you." That was enough for her to see herself and for others to begin truly seeing her. Jordan started mentoring younger students, helping them cope with invisible pressures. When asked why she did it, she replied, "Because someone had to do it for me." There was no bitterness, only determination, and perhaps something greater: leadership. The following week, Principal Thornton called Jordan in for a special meeting. It wasn't disciplinary, it wasn't formal. It was a proposal, a private meeting between her and Officer Keene, an exercise in restorative justice, as the school called it. No cameras, no audience, just the 2 of them. Jordan hesitated. She didn't want justice on display. She wanted truth. After a night of reflection, she agreed, but on one condition: that she could leave whenever she wanted. And so, in a small room with high windows and walls covered with inclusion and diversity posters, Jordan entered and saw the man who had made her feel small for so long. He was sitting, hands on his lap, without his uniform. He no longer looked like the man from the hallway. He simply appeared diminished, not physically, but in the weight of his gaze. It was as if the uniform had carried all his arrogance, And now, without it, there was only an ordinary man, bewildered by being exposed. Jordan sat without speaking for a few seconds. The silence wasn't uncomfortable, it was necessary. She took a deep breath, looked directly at him, and began with a firmness she had never practiced. "You humiliated me. You threw water on me in front of everyone. You stopped me in the middle of the street for no reason. You followed me to my job, all because your son couldn't accept the fact that a girl, a black girl, was smarter than him." Keane tried to speak, but nothing came out. The only sentence he managed to form was, "It wasn't my intention." Jordan leaned forward without raising her voice. Then what was it? The ensuing silence was the loudest anyone had ever heard in that school. He had no answer, and she didn't need one anymore, because for the first time he had to listen without interruptions, without excuses, without the shield of authority. Jordan didn't demand an apology. She didn't need remorse. What she wanted, and what she got, was for him to listen. To know that she knew, and that this couldn't be buried as something unintentional anymore. When Jordan left the room, the sun was shining brightly on the side of the building, illuminating the silent hallway where, days before, she had been turned into a spectacle. Now, everything seemed different. Not because the bricks had changed color, but because she had changed from the inside out. Elijah was leaning against the car, as if he knew exactly how long she would be in there. He didn't ask anything. He just looked at her as he always did, with respect, with contained pride, as if acknowledging a soldier returning from war. "So?" he asked. Jordan exhaled slowly, closed her eyes for a second and replied, "It seems I won, without having to fight." And it wasn't just strength in the phrase, it was clarity. She didn't shout, didn't break, didn't retaliate. She was heard, and that was enough. In the days that followed, life didn't turn into a movie. There wasn't an epic ending with a loud soundtrack, but something inside her was at peace. The Keane case ended up in the local newspaper, even though his name wasn't mentioned. Other students found the courage to share their experiences. Principal Thornton announced the creation of an internal committee to review the security officer's conduct policies. Jordan declined the invitation to participate, not because she didn't want to help, but because she understood that her role was different now. She continued writing, mentoring, and strengthening herself. She became a reference, not because she sought the spotlight, but because she remained coherent when everything around her screamed for her to back down. Looking back, Jordan realized that the moment she was most afraid was also the moment when something new was born inside her. The certainty that her voice, even when low, had the power to move mountains.